specific work done since January 2025. So please stay tuned for that. But today, we revisit an important sector of national development: water supply, housing, coastal protection, and what have you, are matters that directly affect the generality of our people. And President Mahama is determined to ensure that these services are provided in quantities that are adequate and help the people of Ghana attain an appreciable standard of living. And who best to take us through what has been happening in the sector than the Minister for Works, Housing and Water Resources, the Honorable Ken Adjei, who has been tasked with the responsibility to manage the sector and ensure that specific objectives are realized. So we have the pleasure of being joined by the Honorable Ken Adjei, Minister for Works, Housing and Water Resources, to reveal to all of us what has been happening in the sector under his watch. Without taking any more of your time, I would invite the Honorable Minister to the microphone to make his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Felix Ofosu-Kwakye. The Honorable Minister of State for Government Communication, directors and heads of departments and agencies, friends from the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor and a privilege to present the performance of the Works, Housing and Water Resources sector. I consider this occasion as both significant and timely. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I extend warm greetings to all stakeholders as well as viewers joining us virtually through social media platforms. Your participation underscores our shared commitment to inclusive governance and effective communication. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ministry's core mandate is rooted in the vision of building a resilient, modern society that enhances the economic and social well-being of all Ghanaians. Our work aligns with the government's resetting agenda, focusing on equity, sustainability, and transformation. Over the past months of resetting, we have made notable strides across our three core areas: works, housing, and water resources. Our progress speaks to our enduring commitment to transforming lives, strengthening communities, and advancing the foundational work for Ghana's sustainable development. The works subsector. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the functions of the works subsector focuses on 1, the protection of the country's coastlines; 2, provision of urban drainage system to mitigate flood disasters; 3, maintenance of government properties; and 4, delivery of quality architectural and engineering services. Coastal protection works. Ghana's coastal belt continues to face significant threats due to the rising sea levels, resulting in flooding, shoreline erosion, and community displacement. In response, my ministry has prioritized strategic coastal protection to safeguard lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure. Notable achievements include the successful completion of coastal protection works at Komenda, Ningo Pram, and Elmina. At Komenda, the project included the construction of a critical bridge and a modern fish market, which have also been completed. These interventions have improved local connectivity and enhanced livelihoods, particularly in the fishing communities of British and Dutch Komenda. At Ningo Pram, extensive dredging of the Jale Lagoon Basin was also successfully executed, providing improved protection for residential dwellings and restoring public access to the beachfront. Similarly, the third phase of the new Takoradi Sea Defense Project at Elmina has also been completed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these three projects have altogether protected an approximately 15 kilometers of coastline and offered protection to lives, livelihood, and properties. Additionally, there are other coastal protection projects at various stages of completion. 1. Dansoman Sea Defense, 95% completed. Dansoman Emergency Sea Defense Phase 2, 15% completed. Discove Coastal Protection Project, 36% completed. 4. Anomabu Coastal Protection Project, 81% completed. 5. Cape Coast Coastal Protection Project Phase 1, 80% completed. Cape Coast Coastal Protection Project Phase 2, 23% completed. Aboase Coastal Protection Project, 75% completed. Axim Coastal Protection Project, additional works, 12% completed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will recall in March 2025, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama visited Sulakope, Agaveji, and Amutinu in the Ketu South municipality, where tidal waves had displaced thousands of residents. During that visit, a firm commitment was made by His Excellency, the President, to address that devastation. True to that promise, I am pleased to announce that a contract was awarded for the Phase 2 of the Blekusu Coastal Protection Project. And in August last year, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, officially broke ground for the commencement of this critical project. Currently, the project is 25% completed, and calm has already been restored along the coastline. Additionally, the Lower Volta Basin Sea Defense Corridor has been incorporated into Waka Resilience Investment Project Phase 2, with technical assessments and environmental impact studies currently ongoing. Feasibility studies have also commenced for future coastal projects at Shama Apo, Ningo Pram Pram, that is the Phase 2, and Ada West. Drainage and flood control works. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, flooding remains one of the most pressing infrastructural challenges in the country. Addressing flooding has remained one of the topmost priorities of this government since assuming office. A presidential task force on flooding, led by the Deputy Chief of Staff, has been established to coordinate national flood mitigation efforts. This high-level team, as part of its efforts, have carried out comprehensive assessments on major drainage infrastructure within key hydrological basins. These assessments have assisted in prioritizing critical flood-prone areas for interventions, as well as guided the design and execution of long-term flood mitigation strategies. Under the National Flood Control Program, spanning 2020, 2023, and 2024, my ministry has been implementing critical interventions to reduce flood-related risks. Notably, progress has been made in the construction, rehabilitation, and desilting of drains across various regions. These works have contributed significantly to improving the capacity of drainage systems, thereby reducing flood risk in identified hotspots. These interventions have resulted in the construction of an approximately 1.76 kilometers of storm drains as at December 2025. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as part of the Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project, that's known as Gov't, performance-based dredging of the Odo Channel has continued from the line sections at Caprice and Circle. A post-dredging survey indicates that a total of 90,936 cubic meters of sediment have been dredged and transported to the designated handling sites. Similarly, upgrading interventions, including the construction of storm drains, local drains, major culverts, road paving, as well as other road works in Alogboshi, Akwetema, and Nima are 58%, 62%, and 65% completed, respectively. Other drainage improvement works have also commenced at Achimota, Nima, Paloma, and Kanishi. As part of the non-structural measures, various equipment have been acquired and installed across key water bodies in Accra to support the flood early warning response systems for Accra. The development of the flood early warning response systems for Accra is advanced, with servers now installed and configured for Ghana Hydrological Authority, the National Disaster Management Organization, and the Ghana Meteorological Authority. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in response to emerging flood risk in the Greater Kumasi metropolitan area, drawing on lessons from the ongoing Gov't project, the government secured grant funding to conduct strategic flood risk assessments across 3 key drainage basins, i.e. Sisa, Wiwi, and Abuabo. The consultants engaged to assess community-specific vulnerabilities in low-income areas such as Abuabo and Asawasi, as well as identify flood-prone zones within the broader Kumasi urban area, have submitted draft reports to the ministry, recommending a range of flood mitigation measures. Short-term proposals include dredging and drainage cleansing, enforcing building regulations, adopting flood-sensitive land use planning, and establishing a Kumasi flood early warning system. For the medium to long term, the report suggests removing key bottlenecks in major drains, implementing a room for the river approach to restore floodplains with prospects for resettlement, while establishing a coordinated, sustainable waste management system for the metropolis. The ministry is seeking the needed resources to begin the process that will bring relief to the people of Kumasi. The government therefore remains resolute in its commitment to sustainably address flooding and its related challenges through continued investment, enhanced institutional collaboration, and community engagement. Operational hydrology. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to modernize Ghana's hydrological monitoring systems, the ministry installed 3 telemetry units along the Black and White Volta River systems to enhance flood forecasting and real-time hydrological monitoring. These are at Laura on the Black Volta, Yarugu, and Nawuni along the White Volta River in northern Ghana. These installations significantly strengthen our capacity for data-driven early warning systems and disaster preparedness. Furthermore, an automatic discharge keeper has been installed at Aveno, Weja in the Odo River, and Densu River catchment areas, significantly improving flow measurement and generating actionable hydrological data to support urban flood management in Accra. Additionally, real-time flow monitoring equipment has been installed at Sugakope in the Lower Volta Basin, Ashalaja in the Densu River Basin, and Pokwase in the Odo catchment, all aimed at monitoring stream flows and collecting the necessary hydrological data and information for flood risk management and mitigation. In a complementary effort, the Ghana Hydrological Authority, in partnership with the Volta River Authority, has also rehabilitated several malfunctioning gauging stations within the Volta River Basin. The renovated stations include Pran, Sineso, Yendi, Pasa, Dodo Tamale, Ahamasu, and Vapo. The housing subsector. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana continues to grapple with housing deficit currently estimated at over 1.8 million units. This gap is further exacerbated by widespread affordability challenges which prevent a large portion of the population, particularly low and middle income earners, from accessing safe, secure, and dignified housing. Rapid urbanization has intensified the situation with more than half of the country's population now residing in urban areas, and projections indicating that this could rise to over 72% by 2050. The demand for housing in metropolitan areas such as Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi has therefore grown exponentially. Unfortunately, the supply of housing has not kept pace with this demand, resulting in overcrowding, soaring property prices, and the expansion of informal settlements. This scenario underscores the urgent need for coordinated, forward-looking interventions that simultaneously address housing supply and affordability, whilst promoting sustainable urban planning to match Ghana's evolving demographic realities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my ministry has continued its efforts to complete the stalled affordable housing projects across the country. TDC Ghana Limited has continued works on 800 housing units under the PON Affordable Housing Project at Tema Community 26. These units are at various stages of completion and progressing steadily. To position TDC Ghana Limited as a key player in Ghana's housing industry, the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, performed the sword-cutting ceremony last year for the construction of the Oxygen City housing projects at Ho in the Volta region. This landmark initiative seeks to address Ghana's housing deficit through the development of 1,000 affordable housing units. This project is the first by TDC Ghana Limited outside the Tema acquisition area. The Oxygen City housing project, which will be housed on approximately 1,000 acres of land, is envisioned as a well-planned, serviced, and economically integrated community, featuring essential amenities such as a school, hospital, shopping mall, gym, and a recreational center. The expected completion date is June 2027. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my ministry has intensified engagement with the selected developer for the completion of the Sagleme Affordable Housing Project. Following the completion of the developer selection process led by Deloitte Ghana, the head of terms have been duly signed by both parties. The joint venture arrangement concluded among all parties as well as the shareholders' agreement drafted and mutually agreed upon. The document is currently with the Attorney General for review and finalization. Similarly, the State Housing Company Limited continued works on key projects, including the Surge Homes development at Amrahia, the SHC Gardens project. Both projects are currently at 68% and 70% completed, respectively. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, National Home Ownership Fund continues to make significant progress in expanding access to affordable housing for Ghanaians. Through its construction financing support, the fund has completed the construction of 129 housing units at Tema Community 22, awaiting commissioning. Similarly, an additional 50 units at Shire Hills is expected to be completed by the end of the second quarter. Government Redevelopment Program. distinguished ladies and gentlemen. The Government Redevelopment Program is a strategic initiative aimed at revitalizing prime public lands and infrastructure to better serve the evolving needs of public servants and the urban environment. The program seeks to transform underutilized state-owned properties into modern residential and administrative developments, in line with effective land use planning and sustainable development objectives. Under the program, the Ministry is executing various redevelopment projects, delivering a total of 625 housing units, which is currently at different stages of completion. To date, 195 housing units have been completed at Roman Ridge, Laboni, and Latebi Okoshi, and are allocated to public servants. The program marks a major step in advancing the government's commitment to expanding housing options for public servants, enhancing living standards, and making more efficient use of limited urban land. Since assuming office, the Ministry has worked closely with the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources to strengthen oversight, safeguard government's interest, and ensure that public assets are neither undervalued nor compromised. Akosombo Dam spillage, resettlement of displaced communities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, following the devastating impact of the Akosombo Dam spillage, my ministry, in collaboration with the 19 affected district assemblies, went through an extensive process to validate a total of 2,225 housing to be reconstructed for the flood victims across 4 regions. Phase 1 of the resettlement efforts consists of 1,010 housing units within the 3 critical impact zones, namely North Tong, Central Tong, and South Tong districts in the Volta region. Site mobilization and construction activities are currently active in 8 locations across the 3 districts, with 251 housing units ongoing at various levels of completion. Greenville District Housing Program. As part of the decentralization agenda and in line with government's commitment to affordable housing, my ministry has initiated the Greenville District Housing Program, a strategic intervention targeting low to middle income earners at the district level. In its pilot phase, the program has commenced in 8 districts, namely South Dai, Asojaman, Achimansa, Ajumako Enyan Esiem, Achima Kwangoma, Doma West, Bole, and Tamale, and at various levels of completion now. Each district is earmarked to receive 22-bedroom housing units as part of the first phase of the project. A hybrid construction approach using compressed earth bricks and sandcrete blocks is being adopted, prioritizing sustainability, cost efficiency, and resilience. The official launch of the Greenville District Housing Program is expected to be performed in the short term. This milestone marks a significant step towards decentralizing housing delivery and advancing social equity, inclusivity, and improved living standards across the country. National Rental Assistance Scheme. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Rental Assistance Scheme, established by the government in 2023 as a social housing program, aims to facilitate access to rental properties for qualifying beneficiaries by providing rent advance. The scheme is currently being piloted in 6 regions, namely Greater Accra, Bono East, Northern, Eastern, Western, and Ashanti regions. In 2025, the scheme successfully facilitated the payment of rent advance for 2,031 Ghanaians across its 6 operational regions, bringing the cumulative number of beneficiaries since inception to 4,732. I am glad to state that so far, the disbursement recovery rate is about 99%, indicating the government seed money is fully recoverable and in circulation. The program's eligibility criteria, application process, and beneficiary success stories highlight its effectiveness in addressing housing needs and enhancing community well-being, and government is poised to take the necessary steps in the short to medium term to scale up the operations of the scheme across all 16 regions of the country. Review of rent laws. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, recognizing the critical role of rental housing in national development, my ministry continued the review of the Rent Act 1963, Act 220, and the Rent Control Law 1986, PNDC Law 138. These reforms aim to modernize outdated legislation, eliminate regulatory bottlenecks, and incentivize private sector investment into rental housing. Key priorities include maintaining tenant protections, especially for low-income and vulnerable groups, while also regulating hostel accommodations fees across the country. Towards the end of the year 2025, the National Rent Dialogue was organized to validate and streamline the proposed amendments. The ministry taking the necessary steps to resubmit the revised bill to Cabinet and subsequently Parliament for consideration and approval. The water subsector, water resources management. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana's annual renewable water resources are estimated at approximately 54 billion cubic meters, with over 70% of this volume sourced from the Volta Basin, shared among 6 riparian nations, including Ghana. However, per capita renewable water availability has been on a steady decline from approximately 3,000 cubic meters per person per year in the 1960s to about 1,650 cubic meters as at today. This figure falls below the United Nations threshold of 1,700 cubic meters, indicating parts of the country are already experiencing water stress situation. Despite the abundance of natural water resources, Ghana continues to face significant and multifaceted challenges that hinder sustainable water resource management. These include 1. Climate variability, such as erratic rainfall, drought, and flood, have become more intense and frequent. Illegal mining, commonly referred to as galamsey, continues to pollute our rivers and threatens our ecosystems. Deforestation and poor land management practices continue to degrade our watersheds. Over 60% of Ghana's river catchments have been subjected to unsustainable land use practices. Inadequate enforcement of regulations, overlapping institutional mandates, limited resources, and lack of real-time data do hamper coordinated interventions and further compound our challenges. Uncontrolled urban sprawl, which has led to the encroachment of wetlands, riverbanks, and recharge zones. Borehole drilling, largely unregulated, is depleting aquifers, while industrial expansion often disregards effluent control measures. To address the challenges outlined above, the Water Resources Commission, with the support of government and other development partners, raised 34,000 seedlings as part of the buffer zone restoration program. Continued with the implementation of nature-based solutions, as well as the establishment of watershed investment programs for some river basins. The Commission has also adopted the bottom-up approach of water resources management by establishing local water governance systems, where riverian communities are directly engaged to support the management of our water resources. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in support of efforts to combat illegal mining, especially within water bodies, the Commission has developed the Water Resources Assessment System, which is currently in its operational testing phase, alongside user acceptance testing and training sessions. The system will be linked with the Mining Cadastre Administration System of the Minerals Commission to enhance government's vision of streamlining the permitting and licensing process for small-scale mining while reducing the turnaround time. Additionally, 2 legislative instruments for the management of riparian buffer zones and the control of waste discharge and management of water quality within the country are being drafted with the support of the Attorney General's Office for onward submission to Parliament for consideration. These LIs, when adopted, will minimize encroachment and pollution of water bodies in the country. Water supply. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, according to the Ghana Statistical Service and the WHO and UNICEF Joint Monitoring Program, approximately 88% of Ghana's population has access to basic water services. However, only 44% of the population benefits from safely managed water services, defined as improved water source, that is on premises, available when needed, and free from contamination. Urban water access is relatively high at 96%, whereas rural areas report an average of 74%, with certain regions experiencing access rates as low as 42%. It is important to note that these figures include communities where service is often intermittent and unreliable. One of the critical challenges facing urban water supply is non-revenue water, which stands at an estimated 50%, far above the international benchmark of 25%. Meanwhile, nearly 4 million Ghanaians continue to depend on unimproved, limited, or surface water sources. Other persistent issues impacting water supply include aging infrastructure, low investment in maintenance, poor cost recovery, high operational cost, pollution of water sources, and climate-induced variabilities. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to address these challenges, my ministry continued the implementation of key interventions aimed at expanding and improving water services nationwide. The following urban water supply projects are at various stages of completion. 1. Keta Water Supply Project is 72% completed. Wenchi Water Supply Project is 91% completed. Sekendi Takrade Water Supply Project, 89% completed. Government will soon commence work on the Damango and Sunyani water supply expansion projects, as well as explore the opportunity to conclude all financing arrangements for other water supply projects at Tamale, Yendi, Techiman, and Takwa. Additionally, the Danish government has also earmarked some grant support to expand water supply services to low-income and high-density areas in Wa and Bolgatanga to address water supply challenges to the vulnerable in these areas. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the rural water supply projects are also at various stages of completion. 1. Asenkregwa, 72% completed. Sefirioso, 57% completed. Diadaso, 50% completed. Kweman Damfa, 75% completed. Goso, 59% completed. Jabin, 65% completed. Aveime, 81% completed. Edubanso, 70% completed. Water sector reform. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my ministry continues to pursue water sector reforms in line with the broader objectives of the revised National Water Policy. Studies are currently ongoing to define clear and sustainable pathways aimed at strengthening institutional coordination, improving service delivery, and enhancing financial sustainability. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, in the face of resource constraints, the Ministry of Works, Housing and Water Resources remains resolute in its commitment to deliver transformative policies, programs and projects that positively impact the lives of Ghanaians as we confront the complex challenges of infrastructure, development, and environmental sustainability. We urge all stakeholders, both state and non-state actors, to adhere strictly to planning regulations, promote responsible development practices, and demonstrate improved civic responsibility. Let us reaffirm our shared commitment to building a resilient, inclusive, and forward-looking Ghana. On behalf of the ministry, I extend my deep appreciation to all partners and stakeholders for your continued support. We remain dedicated to creating infrastructure that meets today's needs while laying a solid foundation for future generations. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that thorough and on the various activities being undertaken by your ministry. You have indeed shown that whereas you are a man of few words, you are action-oriented and you are getting the job done. This should put to rest any doubts that may linger about the kind of work that you are doing in fulfillment of President Mohammed's charge to you to ensure that the sector you superintend is properly and adequately developed. Well, at this stage, as is customary, we would invite questions from members of the media present relating to the presentation that has been made or any other matter that has to do with the works, housing, and water resources sectors. So I would invite you to the microphone. The usual rubric will apply. Identify yourself, the media organization you work for, and then go straight to your question without any lengthy preambles, please.
Okay. Minister, my name is Abdul Hanan Adam, and I work with EIB Network. Minister, you gave highlights with regards to the Akosombo Dam spillage, but sometime 11 months ago when President Mahama visited Ho for his thank you tour, he made mention about the fact that adequate compensation will be paid to victims of the Pon and Akosombo Dam spillage. It's been 11 months, but the previous administration, through your predecessor, said some 2,000 housing units had started and were at various stages of completion. In this last 1 year, how many of these houses have been given back to the victims, or they are also still at the various stages of completion, as you've indicated? My second question has to do with the Gov't project. We know Ghana approved it in 2019. It was a World Bank facility worth $200 million US. But in April, when President Mahama visited some or toured some flood-prone areas in Accra, he expressed his disapproval over the delay of the completion of the project. You subsequently, as minister, in November, also visited these areas and employed contractors to accelerate work in these areas. It's been about 3 months. Still, the project is not yet completed. How much has been spent so far? And given the fact that between 2020 and 2023, we had some economic turbulence, did government of Ghana commit additional resources to this project? Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's any other question, I would invite it at this stage. So in the interest of time, if you have any question, please move towards the microphone so that we have a quick transition.
Komla Kluche is my name. I work for TV3. All right. My question is two, actually. The first one is the previous administration introduced a rent assistance scheme on to most people, but we haven't really heard much about it. Can you apprise us with what has been done so far and the benefit it brought to Ghanaians, and if it's still running, how much has been expended so far with regards to the rent assistance scheme?
Komla, if I didn't know better, I would have said that you just came in, because I heard the minister clearly outline what has been done. But for your benefit and for the benefit of those that may not have heard him, he will reiterate what has been done.
So that will be withdrawn?
Yes. No, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's not.
Okay.
I won't disallow it. Maybe there are those who may not have followed him, but...
So the other bit has to do with the ravaging of the sea in the Ketu South constituency. I mean, it's become a topical issue. We've seen some work being done. Recently, we've seen a contractor move to site. What is the state of work, and also what are the plans for the rest of the coastline? Because once it moves from one side, it goes to the other side. What's the plan? Is it the intention to have sea defense right from the very start to the end of the coastline?
Again, I believe the minister spoke about that, but he will reiterate it for your benefit, yes. No problem.
Thank you. My name is Kester. I write for the Daily Graphic. First one is something that really bothers me. If you're driving towards Accra from broadcasting area, there is some particular parts around SCC that floods all the time during the rainy season. I don't know if it's a ritual that we enjoy seeing or if we can actually do something about it. So I wanted the minister to tell me if it's come to his attention, and if he has something he wants to do about
Repeat
that particular
the area you are describing.
around SCC, if you're driving from Kaswa to Accra, on that stretch, yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then my second question is about water. I heard him talk about water resources, and I didn't hear him speak about Galamsey in relation to water resources.
Oh, I believe he did. I believe it. But then we'll ask your question, yes.
Okay. But then I wanted to know how much Galamsey has interrupted our water supply.
All right.
If we can really get concrete figures, and if the water we are consuming is healthy, how assured are we that it's not infested with heavy metals and mercury and all of that? Because it's become a concern around the world.
All right. It's a
But
fair
then,
question. So you answer, yeah.
this is also around water. Teshi and its environs have been having some rationing, and there's been a lot of talk. Every time the water resource spokesperson speaks, he apologizes and then urges the people to have patience. I wanted to know if there are really real concrete steps being taken, and if the ministry can appraise us on those steps being taken in relation to water rationing in Teshi. And Nana Chrome, they are complaining they don't have water and all of that. So if you can tell us about water, especially urban water supply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Minister, good afternoon. Akosia Adjei here from City FM. I have 3 questions to ask. So first of all, as a member of the Presidential Anti-Flood Task Force, I heard you mention initiatives that you've taken, aerial recce, to identify flood-prone areas, and approximately some 1.76 kilometers of storm drains under the flood control program that have been constructed. My question is, how much has been invested so far in dealing with flooding since you assumed office? My second question is, given the scale of the complexity of water sector and then the works and housing as well, in your own view, do you think that these 3 sectors should be put under one ministry? Right. And then 3, there are increasing calls for Chinese investors to enter Ghana's real estate sector to boost competition and to ease the high prices. So I want to find out, what is your take on this? Do you encourage Chinese investors into this sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Maxwell Agbagba. I work with Joy FM. Over the years, a lot of private hostel owners have profiteered from the accommodation challenges on the campuses of our universities. Sometime last year, at the annual New Year School, President Mahama talked about a 10,000 bed capacity, which is in the offing, to mitigate the situation, especially on the University of Ghana campus. The minister talked about amendment to the rent control law and in the Rent Act to regulate that hostel accommodation space, which I believe would also mitigate the situation. I want to find out from him what rent setting guidelines will be introduced, what controls, what ceilings will be introduced. And then my second question, anytime we talk about affordable housing projects, a lot of people ask, how affordable are they going to be? I want to find out what measures are being taken to ensure that higher income earners and speculative buyers do not capture the affordable housing units that we are putting up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Honorable Minister, you may answer these questions, after which we'll come back for a final round before we wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me start with GH1. I think you asked about the pledge that His Excellency the President made during the thank you tour about the compensation and, if I remember, the housing units. Yes, His Excellency made that statement. After the disaster, there was a ministerial committee was put together My ministry actually was charged with putting together buildings for the affected communities. So for the compensation, I would have to go back and check on that, as in the particular sector that was handling the compensation. But so far, and you mentioned whether the previous government also started something. The previous government actually started preliminary engagements, but the actual structure started from last year. And so far, within the first phase, as in the 3 areas, the north, south, and central tongue, we currently have about 251 housing units currently at various stages of completion. 251 housing, not 2,000, because the first phase actually is 1,000 and something housing, not 2,000. But because of some delays with lands and other issues, that's how come it delayed. But as we speak, some contractors are still moving to sites. So very soon, you'll see the housing coming up. And you asked about the Gov't project. The Gov't project, as you rightly mentioned, experienced some lapses. I visited the various sites with His Excellency the President, and after that, I also did my own visit and realized that they were really lacking behind. So I called for an accelerated plan. I tasked the consultants to get me an accelerated plan from all the contractors, of which was submitted and approved. And after that, I visited the sites again. And I can tell you that some of the contractors are actually even working 24 hours. So I'm sure with the accelerated plan that they brought, we will be able to finish on time. Okay. The total amount was 187,200 million USD, out of which 65 million USD was used for the COVID, during the COVID period by the previous government. Thank you. But the project is 100% World Bank finance. I think TB3. Pardon? National Rental Assistance Scheme. Yeah, I think you wanted to find out how much was given, expended so far. Okay. Okay, so at inception, the scheme was advanced a seed money of 27 million cedis. And over time, the principal and interest has rolled over and has accrued a total of 71.7 million, meaning the scheme is doing very well. And through oversight administration, beneficiary numbers has increased from 2,701 in 2024 to 4,732 in 2025. So I think the scheme is doing very well and it's ongoing. And we are even trying to engage other financial institutions to partner them so that we can scale it up to other regions too, so that in future all the 16 regions will be on the scheme. So the scheme is doing very well. Okay, SCC flooding. There's been some works on the SCC area. I will let my director works say something about.
And SCC Kaswa, work is ongoing. So upon completion, that flooding will cease. Ongoing by Quaymont, the contractor. Come again.
Can you give a brief description of the scope of it?
Okay. We are constructing drainage from, how do you call it? More, how do you call it? West is Mall, yes. Down to Atal, I don't know if people knows there. There's a big drain there. So now we are around just after the traffic light. So after completion, the challenge will cease. Yes, so that is it.
There was also a question from CTFM about drainage, how much has been spent so far. In 2025, government allocated about 30 million Ghana cedi. And out of the 30 million Ghana cedi, we undertook some interventions, namely Abeka Aigbe Town, Weja SCC, that's what he just spoke about, Okere in the eastern region, London Bridge in Cape Coast, and Kaswa Millennium City in the central region. I'm sure when we mention Kaswa, people think Accra, but central region. Which Chinese investor? Okay. Yes, I will even rush for them. Why am I saying that? I'm sure from my script we all realize, I mean, we heard what I said, the housing deficit that we have in this country. And if you have a president like we have, who will meet me on the roadside and say, Ken, are you people trying to reduce the housing deficit? And Chinese people are coming in, who am I to say no? No, I wouldn't say that. Recently, I was even in Turkey, and I actually called for investors because I met the Contractors Association over there. I even asked them that they should come. But yes, we will not just receive them. We will look at the source of the funding of the project, and we will also guide them based on our built standards and our built laws. We'll use that one to guide them, not just that they can just flood in, because we also have to think about Ghanaians. But we will receive them because we need more people to enter into the built market, because that is the only way rent can also come down. Because now rent is going up because we don't have a lot of houses. But if we have a lot, then rent will definitely go down, so we will receive them. Hostel. You know, I tried jotting some things down. You know, it is important to stress that merger does not diminish the importance of any sector. The real question is not together or apart, but how they are governed. The merger of the sectors in this case is a strategic decision by the government to improve coordination, strengthen accountability, and deliver integrated outcomes in line with the national development priorities of the government. If we look at Liberia, as they themselves say, Liberia. The Ministry for Public Works has roads as part, housing as part, and energy, other institutions as part. And when you look at Paul Kagame, His Excellency Paul Kagame's country too, there are a lot of mergers with these ministries. So I don't think it's a problem. As I mentioned earlier on, the rent bill, when enacted, will establish an independent rent assessment committee comprising of key stakeholders to ensure fair, transparent, and equitable determination of rent levels, including hostels. But however, the management of the hostel facilities doesn't fall under my ministry. That falls under Ministry of Tourism. But the fees that they charge, that is what falls under my ministry. And that is what the rent bill will be checking to ensure that high fees are not charged as far as hostels are concerned.
That we draw down the curtains here so they can have their news bulletin, midday news bulletin. So on that note, I thank the minister sincerely for coming to update us on the work that is being done in the sector. And as I indicated, it has shown clearly that a lot of work is being done. I'm sure that the next time he comes here, in a couple of weeks or months, there would even be more successes to report. So thank you all for coming, and see you next week when, all things being equal, we'll have the local government minister to brief us on performance under his sector. Thank you very much.
Just gone by is a presser or a briefing by the Minister for Works and Housing, Kenneth Gilbert Adjei, from the Jubilee House. But I have with me my colleague, Jude Duncan, to bring us key highlights of that particular address. Hello, Jude, welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Interesting. What are the key highlights for you in this particular briefing?
So mainly key issues around the sector, Ministry for Works and Housing and Water Resources came up. Key among them included the Akosombo Dam spillage. Of course, rental issues, very topical. The management of state assets, including state bungalows. A lot of people don't know that it falls under the purview of the Ministry of Works. And the housing project fell under the broader team of, managing or providing affordable housing. And of course, you know that the country has experienced some severe water crisis in parts of the capital. So the minister used the opportunity to highlight all of those issues that fall directly under the purview or directly under his watch as minister. On the Akosombo Dam spillage, the minister made it clear that over 2,225 houses are being constructed across 4 regions to, help victims who had their homes displaced in the flood. And of course, he also talked about the fact that the NPP government began the consultation and engagement period, but it was this administration that began building these houses for the victims. Of course, on rent as well, he talked about the fact that investors are welcomed into the country. This was a question posed by our correspondent at the presidency, Akosua Otron, whether government will be willing to get on board some Chinese investors in Ghana's real estate. And he was clear that they welcome investors, but will be enforcing, the required regulations to ensure that the authenticity of our built environment is maintained. Among other really interesting conversations that came up in his address.
I believe the one about housing was particularly a great one for the youth because of the amount of money the youth have to spend, in getting accommodation and all. I'm sure for you that was also the key, very key. You've mentioned a lot of things, but what is the key thing you would say you got from that briefing?
Housing obviously key because it affects a lot of people. Our housing deficit as a country really is nothing to write home about. But even before I come to that, Samuel, he touched on another key issue, which had to do with flood mitigation, right? So we know how the capital and other urban spaces usually become after usually some few hours of downpour. Now, he mentioned that efforts were underway to improve, our flood resilience. He talked about the fact that the presidential committee being led by the Deputy Chief of Staff, Standogbe, to address, flood hotspots in the country. Enormous work was being done in the area. He also mentioned the Gov't project, which is supposed to improve across or, communities along the
coastal areas?
Not the coastal areas. So Gov't is mainly for along the Odo River Basin. Exactly. So all communities along the Odo River Basin are to, see improved resilience when it comes to flood. So those were the major issues. Top of my head, he talked about Akosombo Dam spillage, he talked about flooding, he talked about housing, and of course, improved water access. He mentioned that 88% of urban spaces, have access to water, but only 44% have, improved water, running through their pipes adequately and at will. So that was clearly an issue, but hopefully, he said his government is minded to do more within the space.
Thank you so much, Adjei.